Hello, everyone. So today I wanted to go over main points that sort of highlight our chapter. And there are two main things that I picked up on chapter 11. One of them being that globalization affects the way in which cultures live, whether that's cultures tend to stick to traditional norms or they're influenced by outside factors such as technology through expanded economies. They take those aspects and make them their own, and this impacts the way in which companies can operate within a foreign environment because they have to respect those cultures and traditions while at the same time not conforming to corruption or bribery, illegal activities that would not help the company be sustainable. And so this first video is going to talk about how you can stick to your traditional norms, or a culture can be influenced by other cultures and make them their own. So here is the first video.
My point is here people have a choice. Just like the Indian lady could wear her sari or the Japanese woman can wear her kimono. We are changing our culture from within, but at the same time we are reconnecting with our traditions. We know that modernization is happening, and yes, Qatar wants to be a modern nation, but at the same time we are reconnecting and reasserting our Arab heritage. It's important for us to grow organically, and we continuously make the conscious decision to reach that balance. In fact, research has shown that the more the world is flat, if I use Tom Friedman's analogy, or global, the more and more people are wanting to be different. And for us young people, they're looking to become individuals and find their differences amongst themselves, which is why I prefer the Richard Wolk analogy of globalizing the local and localizing the global. We don't want to be all the same, but we want to respect each other and understand each other. And therefore, tradition becomes more important, not less important. Life necessitates a universal world. However, we believe in the security of having a local identity, and this is what the leaders of this region are trying to do. We're trying to be part of this global village, but at the same time, we are revising ourselves through our culture institutions and culture development. I'm a representation of that phenomenon. And I think a lot of people in this room, I can see a lot of you are the same position as myself, and I'm sure, although we can't see the people in Washington, they are in the same position. We're continuously trying to straddle different worlds, different cultures, and trying to meet the challenges of the different expectations from ourselves and from others. So I want to ask a question. What should culture in the 21st century look like? In a time where the world is becoming more personalized, when the mobile phone, the burger, the telephone, everything has its own personal identity, how should we perceive ourselves and how should we perceive others? How does that impact our desert culture? I'm not sure of how many of you in Washington are aware of the culture developments happening in the region, and the more recent Museum of Islamic Art opened in Qatar in 2008. I myself am personalizing these culture developments, but I also understand that this has to be done organically. Yes, we do have all the resources that we need in order to develop new culture institutions. But what I think is more important is that we are very fortunate to have visionary leaders to understand that this can't happen from outside. It has to come from within.
So for the second video, Bloomberg TV correspondent John Bray discusses the ways in which governments can pose strict regulations on corruption. And this impacts where companies can operate. So there are many countries around the world that don't have strict regulations, which allows corruption to be a huge part of that country. So basically, companies can avoid those situations by operating in a foreign environment that promotes social responsibility and that has those regulations in place to prevent corruption from occurring. And this is very critical for companies as they move into foreign environments.
Corruption risks in the region are continuing to deter investors, so says Control Risks, which has released its annual survey of business attitudes towards corrupt practices. To find out more about the report and how corruption is impacting us here in Malaysia, we spoke to John Bray, Director of Analysis at Control Risks.
We are seeing strengthening, I would say, globally, but the key point to stress is that the process is uneven. So US, UK, and I would say German companies, in a way, they have an advantage in that they're ahead of the curve because they have tighter regulation in their own countries, as affects their international operations. That could be presented as a disadvantage. We think it's an advantage because it presses them to do what they should be doing anyway. And what they should be doing anyway is proactive. It's not just negative. It's not just don't pay bribes. It is being proactive. Train your people, select your opportunities, do the right thing in a sustainable way. So this is about sustainable business. It's about a positive, not a negative.
And from the government's platform, how can they best level the playing field when it comes to regulating international business deals that would come into their sovereign space?
Okay, so there are 2 points here. One of the drivers for the report is precisely about the international regulations. So it's the US laws, UK laws, German laws, all the industrialized countries' laws cover their companies' operations internationally. That those regulations need to be enforced even-handedly, and the level of enforcement between countries is frankly uneven. US, UK, Germany, Switzerland are in the lead. Other countries are lagging behind. But what we're also seeing, and this is an important trend, is that levels of enforcement are going up in many, we characterize them as host countries. So China has a much stronger enforcement program, both on domestic but also on international companies. We're seeing the same sort of trend elsewhere, looking further afield, Brazil, to some extent Indonesia, to some extent even India. What we want is indeed a level playing field, so the laws are applied even-handedly across the board.
Now, looking at the fact that perceived corruption risk deters investors when it comes to striking deals, what is the quantum of loss quantifiably or conceptually when it comes to this corruption risk?
Well, what we're seeing is that corruption risks do deter good companies to a degree. It's only one factor. They're going to, of course, consider the commercial opportunities first.
Key takeaways from these videos are: 1. Companies need to distinguish cultural differences and recognize the country's traditional norms. And 2nd, they also need to be aware and not follow the corrupt business practices of some cultures to successfully operate in a foreign nation. It is critical for the company to know and understand their target market to be successful in countries that may have different norms, ethics, and ideas than in the West. So even though corruption is a normal part of some countries' business practices, U.S. companies should still follow the business ethics that we follow, and they can still be successful and profitable in the global economy today. So I hope those videos were insightful, and I will see you on class on Monday.